Welcome everyone to Spirit Coffee Talk. I'm Ginette Biro, and with me is Elyse Catherine and Lisa Richmond, and we are some of the mediums and channelers at Avalon Spirit. And every Friday we get together and chat about spirit things. And today I wanted to bring forward a question from the Q&As that I posted from my podcast, but I thought this would be so well answered between the three of us with our experiences in readings plus ourselves. So we're going to dive into this one. And the question is, can our loved ones who have passed and our spirit guides disagree about how best to help us? That's a cool question, because I know that when I first started in this journey, I had this preconceived notion that anyone on the other side in the higher realms, they know everything and everything is harmonious and perfect. It just is. And it's only chaotic here. And I'm not saying that there's necessarily chaos on the other side, but there are many, many consciousnesses, conscious. There are many entities and beings with personalities and histories and pasts and wisdom to share. And I really have come to learn that they too can have disagreements. And I want to share a story to start us off and then see where this goes. So I went from my belief of thinking they know all, it's always harmonious, to then thinking, you know, they must have these opportunities to discuss, but it's probably always in agreement, right? It's like, I think we should do this. Yes, that's great. Like, it's always just perfectly in agreement, until I had an experience a year ago, maybe, where I had a new guide come in, and I had known this guide before, but this guide came in because I knew them in life. So they knew me embodied as human to human. Then they crossed over, returned back to spirit, and they started to sit on my council as a guide. And what was so interesting is one day I was sitting there and spirit came in really strong, and this person came forward, and I heard them say to my guides, we need to tell her what's going on with this because it's not fair that she doesn't know. And of course, I'm like, what? Right? Like, what do I need to know?
What don't I know? Yeah.
Yeah. And he was like, she needs to know this because I know how it affects her in the human form, having been with her, walked beside her in the human form. And I could hear him saying to my guides, from your perspective, you see it as this, which makes sense. But having walked with her in the human form, I know that this is having a greater effect on her mind, body, and spirit than you realize. So I need to share this with her. And then he proceeded to share what was going on, which was in turn extremely helpful for me to know. And so what I found interesting was the fact that they showed me this debate, and that the spirit that came in to help me came in a little more forcefully against my guides. It wasn't this like everything's supported and delicately conversed and all this kind of stuff. It was like, no, trust me. I know, and this is why I know, and this is what we're doing. And then it was like, blah, here's the thing. So I've come to understand that they will, in fact, disagree on what is best, and that they also do really value the opinion of those that have recently crossed over. Because they're closest to what it's tangibly like here. Because even if I tangent just 1 second longer, I remember the vast difference of how I viewed my human experience when I had my NDE. I remember there was the human me, but then there was the spirit me that is much more joyful in the lessons learned. And then there's the human me that's like, yeah, I see your joy and I see the wisdom, but do you know how hard that was?
Yeah.
Like, do you know how hard I had to push to get there? Like, I get it, but do you get this? And so I see that disconnect. Anyway, so that's my personal experience. Have either of you ever come across something like that, or any insights? Or
well, I know for me, that when I'm communicating with individuals' guides versus communicating with individuals' loved ones from the other side, it's a very different interaction. And obviously, like, not only is it different, like in the frequency, but it's also like, I feel like the guides will bring through messages through the source of like their the individual's like I have to use human words here, but like auric field or direct connection to spirit and their light force kind of thing. Whereas loved ones will come in a disc, like in a separate energy field, like in a separate, download or interaction. They come through with different energy. And so I've had individuals, loved ones come in with a concern about someone. And then I'll call forward like that person's higher self or guides, and they'll be like, they're on their path and they're learning this and they're, whereas their past or deceased mother will be like, they're experiencing intense anxiety and they need X, Y, and Z using these tools that we did when he was a little boy kind of thing. And I'm like, hey mama, like, I love that. That's beautiful. But like, he didn't come to me with it. It's like, I'm not, you know what I mean? And so like going to the guide system, they're like, he's experiencing in this and everything's going to be okay kind of thing. Like, it's like this, it's like more of the free will. We're the outside kind of guides that way, but loved ones will come in, especially if they're like parents or people who really deeply loved them on the other side, like in human form. So you're right, Ginette, it isn't the same energy just because they're on the other side. That's my experience. Like communicating and messaging and direct messaging and through mediumship with one's higher self and guide system versus loved ones is completely different.
Mm-hmm.
It's a different source system that comes through completely different energy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and if you think about it, like people who, not to say that this isn't the case with our guides, but I think it's a lot more, it can be influential and maybe more of an intense way that the people who incarnate with us on earth have karmas with us. They have pre-agreements, right?
Mm-hmm.
So even from the perspective of the human self, if it's a person who in human life, maybe you had a really hard relationship with, they're going to have their own context and kind of source of their perspective based on your karmic relationship and interaction with them. And so that can kind of create a different lens as well. Not necessarily better or worse, but it's just a different lens that they might be looking at your experience through, whether that's positive or negative or whatever it is, it's just different. And that's one of the reasons too why I like to go straight to the higher self in readings right out of the gate. And for myself, I think I said that in when we got to know our guides or got to know our co-hosts, because for me, it's like, that's me in spirit. And then, I like to call in my guides or loved ones after that. But my spirit self is the one that is like, we agreed to come here. So like, let's go to you as the direct source first to kind of point me. And then I'd love to hear from the rest of you.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
that's totally it.
Yeah.
I have a good question. Either of you, when channeling loved ones, do you ever get more of the feel, because you talk about having karmic connections, do loved ones ever come in and try to explain that to the individual, or is it more like communicating the way that they communicated in their life? Or do you ever get, when you're talking to somebody's loved one, their loved one explaining, this is kind of the dynamics of a relationship because we were playing out this karmic agreement and helping the person to understand it?
Yeah, I know I've definitely had that where like some pretty harsh experiences. And like the soul, there's one that sticks out, and without going into too much detail, there was one that sticks out where the soul came through right away. And it was a very, 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 very traumatic connection to them.
It usually is. Yeah.
Yeah. And this soul had absolute clarity on why and what, and wanted to explain it to the person from that higher level to give them some peace about it. And I know that my position as the medium sharing these messages, like I was like hanging onto a roller coaster and trusting in the process, but the end result was exactly what the spirit wanted. It gave this person so much peace.
Yeah.
And they were able to drop so many pieces of baggage or whatever it was to understand the higher link, not just the human difficulty between the two.
Yes. That can bring so much peace to the individual, but holy, I hear you, like bringing through that message, and it's like it comes through and then you have to filter it on a human level to be able to deliver it in
Mhm.
the same energy that it's delivered, yet insert human compassioness. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
that's the trick of the
Mhm.
mediumship, right? Those
Yeah,
are big ones, aren't they?
I had that happen with like my dad's passed now. So I chat with his spirit regularly, which is such an interesting experience. But I had that happen before he passed away, like
Mm.
6-7 years before he passed away. Him going through some of his life experiences, and um and it was really early on in my kind of like opening up journey, and I had this meditation, and it was in relation to my partner that I have now, who was all connected into that, and I was like trying to do all this healing work and and my dad's spirit in this meditation, and again, he was incarnated, we never had this conversation in 3D form. His spirit came in and was like, you have to let me go on this journey. Like, I know your heart in it, I know what you're trying to do, I understand, but like, you have to let me live my life. And this is why, and this is what it leads to. And it's also interconnected. And that got me down a healing road that I might not have taken. Maybe I would have, because again, it's like, they're always kind of pushing us and guiding us towards what we need. But it sent me on a healing journey that really kind of shifted the trajectory of things. And now when I look back, I'm like, gosh, then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then all kind of like laid out, that where now I look back, 8-9 years later, because he's been passed away now for just over 4 years. I'm like, holy shit, what it like that one conversation with him in spirit when he was still here really led me down a path that I can see how one thing led to another, led to another, led to another. So
Wow.
it can be so impactful and challenging, because I remember I was at like a mediumship circle, like learning to tune in and stuff, and I was like, oh
My
sobbing my
gosh.
face off.
Oh.
And people were probably like, what is happening with this girl? But it was a really it was a really impactful experience. But again,
Wow.
he and I had a karma, right?
Mm-hmm.
So even now when he's in spirit, I don't necessarily go to him directly, even though he was such an integral part in much of the way my life has unfolded now. And when he passed, we had a really great relationship. We still, there's karmas and there's contexts that he has differently than my spirit self would, or my guides that have never been incarnated or lived that 3D life would have.
Yes.
And following on that, that guy that I was talking about just popped in right now. And
No way.
yeah, totally. He's like, did you know too? So he wants to
John.
share.
I hear you talking about
now
me.
that I have the stage, I'd like to also add.
Oh, hello. He also said that it's common to have certain people come into your life for the purpose of being that liaison. So someone who's going to cross over earlier in your life and then take the role as your spirit guide as well, like part of your team on the other side. Sometimes, depending on what your life plan is, a soul will come in to incarnate with you for a while to get to know the human you, and then cross over to then be that liaison between the two for more finite detail. Isn't that amazing? So then I'm like, was that your purpose? And he's like, well, it was part of it. He's like, it kind of landed that way, but there is purpose in it also. So sometimes it is very specifically by design.
That is unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this on also this, it's all coming to me now. I don't know if I talked about this before, but my daughter had a guide incarnate for a short period of time to get her through a certain stage in her life. And when this particular guide came through in the 3D world, we obviously didn't know, right? Like it wasn't occurring at that time, but she needed to get through a very, very, very difficult period of time in her life. It was her cat. And like this incredible connection with her cat. It was like nothing you'd ever seen before. And then when she got through it and it no longer was like, he was like, it's no longer needed. he passed. And when he passed, it was so heartbreaking to the family, but I communicated with him and he was like, I hated being a cat, but I needed to be a cat. I knew. So it was like her guide incarnated to get her through and then left again and was like, I'm still a guide. I'm still guiding her, but I needed to be an emotional system for her. So it is absolutely unbelievable how these and our guidance system in human form like can materialize, and then like the different contracts and stuff.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful. And it's
Yeah.
also really beautiful to know that like we are not alone. And it's not like we know nothing and they know everything. It's almost like this grid system too, where they're like, okay, they're going to need some help on this side. Or I've heard a lot too is on the guidance system, they're like, as from parents, mostly parents who have passed and have said, we're actually more guided and helpful on the other side than we are in human form, because I had my ego, I had my stuff, my own karmas, and we had the karma, and I couldn't guide and communicate with them in my human form because of all the stuff.
Yeah.
But on this side, it's like they have a whole different relationship with them that isn't convoluted by the human stuff.
Yeah.
You know?
So to take that all a next level, Chatty over here is also saying
Chatty over here.
So he's also saying, he's like, and look now. So I feel like this really is about like 2024 and moving forward. Specifically, he's showing me from like 2024 to 2030. He's like, look now to notice how many guides are now going to be stepping in and doing the opposite. So we were talking about guides that came in for a certain amount of time and then left to be a guidance source on the other side. He's like, now we're also going to be finding a lot of guides that have been helping on the other side, now coming in to incarnate either as an animal, as a walk-in, as a soul braid, all those kinds of things, to then take a presence in our physical sense because they understand the spiritual thing of what's needing to happen. And they're coming in to help reinforce or implement that. And we're going to be seeing a lot more of that very soon. So it can happen totally in both ways, where guides will shift something up. And he said, some of this is predestined, but some of this is also as a result of where things are at. So the same thing, like, can guides disagree on something? You could very well have a situation where your guidance council, I call mine the AR7. Someone said it sounds like a gun.
It does.
There's 7 of them, and they're from the higher realm, and they're all different kinds. So I call them the AR7. Anyway, they can be communicating of what's like the highest good, and one of them can say, you know what? I think with where we're going, I'm going to incarnate. I'm going to come in as, like Maddie, for example, my dog, right? Like that was one of my guides who decided, I'm going to come in as a dog. Here's how I'm going to come in, this and this and this and this, and totally walked in to be this companion. But it can happen in a lot of ways. And that can be plan B, C, D, yada, yada, based on where we're going now. So we're going to be finding these unique, synchronistic guidance things that happen in a very 3D tangible way for us moving forward.
I love this.
Dexter to come back.
I really feel like animals are such high vibe souls. Like, I think people have this idea that animals are like not yet to the ability to be human, so that they're this lower form. Like that's kind of like old school mentality.
Yeah.
And where they have to practice and they're not quite leveled up enough to be human. Whereas I do not agree with that at all. Because I think animals, to come into a consciousness that doesn't hold an ego, is like something that's so unbelievable, and how they connect with spirit. And it's just like I've learned so much through my animals and reading animals that it's like, oh, how completely naive of us to think this. But anyways, going back to it, I think that we will see more and more of that come through with animals, because they do hold that higher frequency, and they're this guidance system. I was talking to you yesterday, I think, Ginette, talking about how these cats keep coming to me. Like, what's the answer? More cats, right? But I get them in spirit. And I see this little cat, and they are, because I'm so deeply intertwined into the goddess system and the high priestesses from my homeland of Avalon, you know, where I originated from. My daughter River, I went and got her from there too when I wanted my fourth baby. I got her from Avalon. Anyway, these cats are like my priestesses from Avalon, and they're coming with these communications, and it's like there's so much more than meets the eye, you know, yet in a human way. Like, you wonder why you have these unbelievable connections with the animals, or animals just come into your life without you expecting it, right? And then again, when they leave and it's so devastating, it's almost like that they join your guidance team. They help you from that higher level consciousness, because it isn't easy to be an animal in this crazy human world, you know?
Yeah. And they do get to observe you in a very similar way as my guide. So my guide was a person, the one who's chatty, but animals are also observing your feelings, your sensations, your
totally.
behaviors. They're
read
like,
your energy.
They are. And so your animal, when they cross over, they are a beautiful link between the human you and your spirit guides. Yeah.
I love that.
I know.
And I'll tell anybody who's wanting to know, like, to communicate and to work with your guides and your guidance system, talk to them. Like, really talk to them and say, okay, look, in my 3D view of humanhood, and I'm needing to connect with you, I'm giving you, instead of give me a symbol, I'm giving you the symbol of a red toy truck or a red truck. Please give me this so I know you're with me. And every time I need you to show me this in form or something like that. You be the dictator. They're like, yes, great. Because remember, they don't have that same level of understanding of what it feels like to be human. They really, really don't. They're doing their job, but understand it's not perfect. They don't have it down pat, and it's not all going according to plan all the time either. So keep that system going, keep that level of communication going, because they want to help. They want to be of service, but you need to be an active participant in it too, and have that openness to receive it. But also you can have that gift, and that gift of communication with loved ones on the other side. Same thing. Give me a sign. I want to smell you again. Smell, scent is a big one that they can give you. So they can give you all the things. They can give you all the things. So really, like, if you're craving that and you're wanting to connect into that, really go inside and ask for that connection, and they will come through. They will come through.
Yeah.
So
Beautiful.
Yeah.
What were you going to say, Elyse?
So kind of going back to that initial question of like the disagreement of our spirit guides versus our incarnated loved ones or deceased loved ones. And one of the things that my dad and Dexter actually were showing me, Dexter was my dog, and I spoke of him as like a soulmate, an aspect of my life, especially through really challenging formative years, that was like a safe place for me. Like, he just was my little security blanket for me to return to and like feel safe and loved and all of the things when I wasn't experiencing that in my 3D life. And so whereas my dad was this, like, you know, we were so much alike and we had so many similarities in our lightness of self and our darkness, probably. Well, for sure. But like deep emotional lessons and like really, you know, karmically challenging each other and healing and all these sorts of things. And so what they were sharing with me, a way in which we can kind of help figure out from a human perspective, like what might be the context of my deceased loved ones in my guidance system versus my my spirit team. And what they were saying is like, and Ginette, I remember after Dexter died, you know, when you're deep in grief, it's really hard to connect in with your loved ones, right? You're sad and your heart's hurting. And I remember you said to me, Dexter is showing himself like a sentinel. It's like he's sitting there, like perched beside your spirit self, perched beside you, like kind of just sitting there watching over and looking out for you. And in life, he was very much like that. I was his first choice when, you know, he was a big cuddle bug, but it was like he was selective about who he would not let close to me. But like, I remember when John and I started dating, he was like, Dexter didn't like me. And it made me so annoyed. And I'm like, he was always like that. You had to show him that he could trust you and that you were going to be a safe space. Otherwise, he's like, kindly get the F out of my space. Like he would wedge himself in between me and other people, or he would, you know, he was so cute and people wanted to always snuggle with him. And you had to like earn his affection. You had to earn his love. And then he was like all over you and, you know, loved to cuddle and play. But there was a sussing out period of like, show me that I, you know, want to open my heart to you or let you close to Elyse.
Totally.
And now he's playing that role in spirit. Whereas my dad, and it's interesting because I've never really thought about it like that. Like I connect and I feel a draw to connecting to Dexter when I need that support and that like safe space, or if I'm feeling really depleted, I'm like, oh, I just want to feel you close.
Yeah.
Whereas my dad, you know, I find he'll come through or I'll connect in with him more from an emotional support place. He's not really there telling me like, here's your next step in life. Here's what you need to do, you know, in your career. Like he's more about like your healing journey and your emotions. Yeah. So how these people showed up for you from a human 3D perspective tends to be they're like subject matter experts in spirit realm on that same topic. And so if you feel there's maybe a disagreement between, you know, spirit guides, counsel versus, I don't know, the cat sitting in your lap. Yeah. So you're talking about more cats.
I know, more cats.
Yeah. If you feel like there's a disconnect between the two, it's like, okay, what might be the context of my loved ones in spirit and versus the context of my higher self, my spirit guides, the people that maybe haven't incarnated with me. And it might be able to help you sort through like who's saying what and why maybe it feels a little clunky or it doesn't necessarily mesh.
Yes.
Totally. I think that's a great point. That's a beautiful point. All right. Well, that
was a good.
Yeah, I like that.
I loved it.
Beautiful.
We're done because the cat's done.
Yeah, I can't take him out.
All right, everyone.
Full of hair.
Thank you so much for joining us as always. I hope you enjoyed that. Do keep the questions coming so you can post them in the comments, and we'd love to take them for topics for our shows. So thanks again, and we will see you all next week.